So I have a little bit of a theory. Not a theory. I was listening to the Geos. Rather, we were listening to the Geos. And the topic of NPCs came back up. And I haven't made a video on this since. I haven't made a video on this since Matt. Since the quantum of conscience response that I did a long time ago. And that got lots of response. And then I immediately was like, well, this is too volatile of a topic. And people are gonna use it to be mean to each other, you know, and then everybody's gonna be judging who's an NPC and who isn't, and if there are AI robotoids running around, then of course they're gonna go in there and get up in the mix, however they do it. But so the basic idea is that it's a construct. The realm is a construct of sorts. And for those who are watching that think that we're living in the real universe, if there is such a thing, I'm not here to make any statements or proofs or anything like that. It's all opinion, subjective opinion. If you listen to Jed McKenna's work on YouTube, he has one premise, and it was the premise borrowed from Descartes, who said, "I think, therefore I am." And Jed McKenna is a bit removed as far as who he is, and the reason for that is very obviously because he isn't. He disappeared. But he kept on going in some sense. You know, maybe he wasn't trying to say that he disappeared completely, but the consciousness completely changes. So Jed McKenna doesn't have any biographical information available as to where he is, who he is he related to Terrence, any of these kind of things. But he said, the only thing, he said, I challenge anyone who's listening or reading or anything to search within themselves and ask the question, what do I know? And he says it's very simple, and that the only thing that, and he says for himself, he says the only thing that I know, irrefutably and beyond a doubt, is that I am. I exist. It's the same thing Jesus said in the Bible. When they asked who he was, he said, I am. And Jed was saying, aside from that, we have no clue about anything. It's all opinion and conjecture outside of that one simple proclamation. And, you know, if you would like to challenge what he said, anyone can do it. You can't even prove the thing that says I am. You can't prove that, you can just know that. He was asking, what is the knowledge what is the thing, or what can be known within your own self? And he said that's the only thing that can be known. And also it's personal. It's not something that can be given to someone else. You can't say, you are, or they are. You can only say and know, I am. And he issued the challenge for anyone listening to try and look into it and see if there's anything else. And I've done this with people before, where you just ask, because everyone likes to yammer on about proofs and things like this, the truth, all this scientific method stuff, and you can't prove anything. You can't prove anything because proof requires words, and words end up in circular logic at the deepest levels every single time. The words end up defining each other, and they still, of course, don't ever touch the physical phenomena which they wish to touch. I've said, like, how do you know the car you're sitting in exists? Well, you could say, well, it feels like I'm inside of something. Okay, but how do you prove it? Even if you were sitting in your car rolling down the street yelling at everyone outside, I really am in this car. I promise you guys I'm in the car. You know? It's not proof. Proof, as we understand it by the scientific community, is a sort of rigorous, controlled environment with constants, and they actually try to remove themselves out of the equation, and they also try to remove every other possible influencing factor from the outside world from the thing that they're trying to study. And then they still have to end up describing it in terms of everything around it. So it's a very silly thing. I don't know exactly where it came from. I'm not really sure how anybody could get, how could anybody get on that? Because it's difficult to understand it. There isn't any proof. Like, what is proof? There isn't any proof of anything. There isn't even any proof of I am. There's just feelings and subjective opinions. And what we the collective or consensus reality is arrived at through people not screaming at each other. It's arrived at through people not screaming at each other. That's all. It's just emotional. Nobody even gets what the scientists are doing, for the most part. And the scientists don't even get what they're doing. They come to they come to a tiniest piece of matter that they can see, and it just disappears out of existence. And then they find out via the double slit experiment that the observer affects the observed. And at that point, it was all done. At the point of the double slit experiment, science, as it was known, was completely done for. At that point, we went into a magical realm at that point. And now we have things like the Mandela effect, We have time travel. We have everything. Like everything science fiction ever talked about, we're starting to see exists in reality. It's not what they called fantasy is more akin to what is reality. But that's not even correct because they're just interwoven. When you have a thought that you want to manifest out into reality, it's half thought and then it's half reality once it comes out. Where's the line? So anyway, so based on the idea that instead of this just being the only creation that was ever created and God created it and we are the creation and life is very serious, instead of that, and of course that's just only one possibility out of many, but perhaps instead of that you could look at it as it's a VR simulation, right? You could. If you have an open mind, you could look at it as it's a VR simulation. Not to mention many scientists have posited that the odds that it isn't a simulation, the odds that you are alive and that it is not a simulation is something like 1 in a million, or however they came up with that silly number. Because it's going to be a lot more safe to be living inside of a sim than to be living inside real life. That's just like very simple logic. Or if you just see that multiple sim-like realities, VR realities could be potentially created, then likely they were created, and the odds of you living in the original are nothing. It's just thought experiments. It doesn't mean you need to freak out. It doesn't mean I need to freak out. I mean, I've already done most of my freaking out earlier on, but and again, it's just in terms of how you want to view things. Everyone has their own worldview. So, but if you look at it as like we're in a sim, an advanced VR sim, imagine it from the point of the gamers that designed it. Gamers design video games. They just think in terms of the player's experience. And then if you imagine we've likely been in sims for the last conceivable amount of history since we popped out of the original reality into the first level sim, right? Then we have a lot of experience in doing this. And all of the people managing the thing in the background, like Adjustment Bureau, also have a lot of experience doing this sort of thing. And it's a similar concept to Rick's. The Rick and Morty on the episode where he went inside of his spaceship's battery, and then inside of that battery was another tiny world, and he went like 7 levels deep. And there's literally no reason why we shouldn't be somewhere along the incepted layers. There's no reason whatsoever why we shouldn't be on that. And you can imagine the first layer just by looking at a very simple video game that you play that's not VR. It grabs your attention. You're sitting there with your controller. Your girlfriend yells at you. You go, uh-huh. And you barely know that you exist in the so-called real world. And that's a simple video game. That's not VR. That's just something on a TV screen. And then you have to remember that all of the ancient past is connected with the present, is connected with the ancient future. And you have to think of how incredibly advanced technology would tie into your current present moment. And the way that it would tie in is that if you go along with the idea that you are possibly in a sim, then the way that it ties in is that you have friends and family, spirit guides, etc., whatever you want to call them, assisting with your journey in whatever level you're in. And of course, instead of saying it in those terms, you would say it in, you would speak it out in folklore and ancient legends. You would speak it out in parables and songs. You would speak it out as everyone always remembered from the original reality. through secret societies, this and that, you speak out the truth in however you do it. But the thing I'm getting to with this particular reality, and again, those who believe in objective reality, and I know most of my family falls into this category, this is not meant to offend or to scare anybody, this is just thoughts. If we are in some sort of simulation, and prior to coming into the sim, however we did it, they tell you, you're going to forget everything. You're going to forget everything, okay? You're not going to remember who you are, even in this level. Even though we know in this level, we're still incepted from another level, okay? This is just the creator essence playing with itself. So, we're going to put you in this thing. And that's not even taking into account the possibility that from one level up, they peer into the next level down and they see something horrifying is going on there, and they actually have to send like actual help. This theory isn't even taking into account that possibility. But if they say, your buddies are like, hey, you tell them I'm gonna go incept another level. And, I see this world that these guys made up, and it seems pretty cool. It's getting kind of crowded around here anyway. And everyone wishes you well. And remember, we're talking about just a regular inception into a sim. Not anything horrifying, just like regular. So you're going to forget everything. But they tell you this is a server, okay? We have mods. There are mods that keep track of all the players, and we have AI mods that keep track of stuff when we need to sleep, right? So you're always going to be sort of taken care of in that particular sim. So you go in. So now you're here, and you start off as a baby, and grow up and all that, and stuff starts happening. So the idea would be, you don't want to be what video gamers know as NPCs. If you port yourself into a sim, it's going to be auto-populated with characters. Unless you have enough, so-called reals porting into the same sim, then a good majority of the creatures running around are going to be sim characters. So essentially, since they don't want to tell you directly, hello sir, you're in a sim, and this is your friendly moderator letting you know that you should be doing something interesting rather than following the other sims around with your thumb up your ass, you should be doing something. Instead of doing that, which would lower the quality of the game, they start triggering events inside of the sim, like earthquakes, like financial resets, or financial crashes. They trigger terrorist attacks. They put all kinds of bad shit on the news, right? And this can go as slow as the programmers want or as fast as they want. And the players may have said, surprise me, I don't even want to know I don't want to have any clue about what I'm getting myself into. Surprise me completely. So at some point, in order to get you to realize that you're in a game and you're supposed to be playing. Now, this actually applies to real life as well, okay? If you are in the original reality, it's a good mindset to have, to think like, there is a narrative being woven here. I am a character inside of the narrative. Like, it's obviously happening whether you're in a sim or in real life. So instead of telling you, look, hey, this is your friendly mod, you should be doing something interesting, instead of selling insurance, they trigger off events, or they shoot you with energetic, full body tingles, or they make you feel real sad and depressed, or they make you believe archons are feeding off of your energy field. Okay, you have to imagine that life has been doing this sort of thing for a very long time. And if it has been imagined, then it is around somewhere. So, kind of like your limit is your imagination. So that would explain why at some point the rest of the population seems to divert mentally, emotionally, spiritually from you and go off in a completely different direction, or you're diverting. Whichever is happening is kind of irrelevant, but there comes a gap, and all of the world changes start being more profound, and instead of just paying attention to your job and your school and your work and your retirement and your pension plan, like how the NPCs do, you start thinking like, what is this? What is this thing I'm inside of? And you want to get creative with it. Or you want to go fight bad guys. Or you want to go, like the Geos are doing, go and shut off the machine, shut off Aten or whatever, the octopus, AI master core is doing. Like, you can do anything, and the reason I say it's likely a sim is because the sim characters, like the president and the cat, we watched the local elections, like local state elections. I don't know, like whenever they're happening, 5-6 months ago, we watched them, and we were just like, these are actual robots. Like they're not even good. They're not even well programmed. Like, they're treating it like a football game. And so it's a lot of that. And the sim will become sillier and sillier until the players realize, like, oh, I should do something different than the rest of these characters because I am different. Or the character gets so pissed off that the character kills themselves in the sim. And, if it was a sim, of course, the character would feel ridiculous after coming out of it, and then they'd probably pay the game creator quite a bit of money because the game creator had them fully fooled. And that's what we want. We don't want reality. Now, of course, if you've meditated enough, you know that the void is not something to be upset about or worried about. The void is our natural state for all of eternity. It's always been exactly the same thing. The only thing you can worry about is when manifestation is happening, when Maya is happening. So to sit there and, it's kind of a moot point. The void is just fact to me, okay? This is, again, personal opinion. But the void, the unchanging nothingness in which all physical phenomena appear, that's the constant of all of existence. And then multiple worlds happen through it. Tao Te Ching calls it the Tao, but they're talking about the same thing. They're talking about the guy who Lao Tzu said the Tao is tinier than an electron, and yet it contains infinite amounts of worlds. Like, it's the base root state is just pregnant void, like nothing and everything, constant flow, impossible to put any words on. And then somehow something pops into existence, and a world pops into existence, and universes and thought forms come in, and all this stuff just appears out of nowhere. And you can live and you can play, you can move around and things like that. But being that we've been doing this for so long, I know for a fact I've been doing this for a really fucking long time. Really, 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 really long. Even just in this particular realm, whatever this is. Being that we've done that for so long, all the challenges are going to be like insane challenges because we got bored of the more trivial ones. Anyway, Did I cover everything I wanted to cover? And also the idea of, don't be mean to NPCs because, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. If they're just robot, like organic portal type beings, then they don't have an internal core that can get their feelings hurt anyway. And if they are alive, then they're not going to get their feelings hurt because they're gonna be empathetic. A lot of these attack bots around make it seem like a lot of humans are idiots and savages and cruel, intentionally cruel, but a lot of them are just robots that were created for part of war. And to say, an NPC, like Aurora says, an NPC is likely just someone in another timeline where their main essence is in another timeline. Like, if we have a bunch of parallels, then we have a bunch of sort of parallel us's. And whichever one the core is, like, the core of my thing seems to be here in this reality, but probably in other parallels, it's kind of faded. And like Aurora said, it looks like an NPC to everybody else there whose core is in that particular parallel. And an NPC could become, a real, like Pinocchio, if they shifted themselves into this reality. Then all of a sudden, that person's blinders would come off, and they'd be like, oh, what's been going on? I've been away for a long time. Just some thoughts. Hope everybody's doing well. Thanks for hanging out. Peace.